today's episode of the Comical Heathen. You don't have to be a heathen to listen, but it certainly couldn't hurt. Hey, I'm your host, Dr. Jerry Jaffe, the world's most highly educated stand-up comedian. I do this podcast here where I interview comedians and other interesting folks about satire and religious satire. We're the only podcast on the World Wide Webs that combines conversations with religion with humor. This all started out as part of a book project I'm working on, and I've been slowly making some progress on that book. I've probably written 4 new pages in the past 4 days, so yay me. We'll get this thing across the finish line soon. About today's episode is a bonus episode that follows on from last week, Season 2, Episode 7, which featured my interview with Leighann Lord. Now, besides being a big Leighann Lord fan, let me explain where this bonus material is coming from. I record all my interviews ahead of time and edit these episodes together like a beautiful Frankenstein's monster. And when I had my conversation with Leighann, there's something that came up as a kind of a rabbit hole or digression. If you happen to catch last week's episode, you'll know that I described Leighann as a nerd, which is how she describes herself on her website. It's part of her bio. So that was appropriate and fun, and I described myself as a nerd. In fact, my partners Dan Brown and Jesse Pimpinella and I have a nerd comedy group, the Action Comedy Nerd Show, that when there's not a pandemic going on, tours around to anime cons, comic book conventions, things like that, when we can really express our nerd personalities and nerd senses of humor and do a lot of nerd jokes, Star Wars, comic books, stuff like that. Knowing Leighann as a self-identified nerd as well, I followed up on that with a couple of questions. And the thing that really launched us into this rabbit hole, as I've described it, was that on her website, she states that her favorite science fiction movie... Hey, what's your favorite science fiction movie? Well, Leighann's favorite science fiction movie is Terminator 2. Now, Terminator 2 is a great movie, and I'm not here to say anything bad about that. It did strike me as an odd choice. Anecdotal evidence suggests that many people would pick Blade Runner as their number one science fiction film. If not that, maybe Star Wars. With that in mind, I just asked her, hey, what's up with that? Terminator 2, what's that about? So we started talking about movies, TV shows. She explained her thinking on why she loves Terminator 2 so much. And it turned into a whole 20-minute or so, nerd fest, which I loved. And we had some fun. Wasn't really directly germane to the project of talking about satire, comedy, religious satire, religion, critical thinking skills. The kind of stuff I try to talk to the comedians about or whoever I'm interviewing. But there was a big chunk of this, again, over 20 minutes, and it was so much fun as an indulgence into our fandom that I decided to go ahead and share it as bonus material. Some of the things we discussed besides Terminator 2 is participating in nerd culture. She also does comedy at anime conventions, and she talks about her experiences doing that. We talk about some other things, like comparing the TV series Watchmen to Lovecraft Country, which if you've watched either or both of those, they have some common themes amongst them. We talk a wee bit about Star Trek, another one of her fandoms, and some other things come up along the way. She was one of the many fans of Game of Thrones who was utterly disgusted by the final season, and she talks about why. Oh, and although I do focus on asking Leighann about her fandoms and her opinions, I do throw in a couple of my own opinions, of course. And along those lines, let me give you a little bit of a teaser. You may not know this, but back in the 90s, I had a chance to walk on the bridge of the Enterprise. And I share that story with Leighann. So how the heck did that happen? That's the kind of stuff we were talking about. And I thought some Leighann Lord fans might enjoy getting some background on her fandom. So I decided to just release this in-between episode, this bonus content, just for Leighann's fans who want to hear more about her experiences as a comedian who's also a nerd. Just so you know, as we segue into this, since this was in the middle of the interview, when I cut to it in a minute, we're just going to throw right into the middle, like we're picking up in the middle of the conversation. That's fine. You'll be able to follow along. Anyway, that's what this little mini episode's about. I hope you enjoy it. Here's the excerpt from my interview with Leighann Lord about her fandoms and her participation in nerd culture. I want to ask about one more thing, and this is a little bit off topic, but while I have you, I can't not ask.
Okay.
This has to do with, I have a side project I do with my friend Dan Brown, and we go to comic book conventions and anime cons and do a whole 1 hour of nerd comedy.
Love it.
And we call ourselves the Action Comedy Nerd Show because we want to make it clear to everybody how nerdy we are. What people may not realize, because we're talking audio, so audio-only podcast, is you are literally wearing a Star Trek necklace right now. And on your website, you frequently refer to yourself as a nerd.
Yes.
And so, two-part question. What's it like being a nerd? What's your experience nerding it up? What makes you into a nerd?
Oh, man. Well, in addition to the necklace, I will show you my Star Trek Enterprise ring. Oh my, yeah, I'm deep in. The nerd experience has changed over the years. You know, when I was coming up, that wasn't a thing to be openly, loudly proud of. You know, you got made fun of for that. You know, and things have definitely changed to the point where nerd culture is pop culture now. It's very mainstream. And to all those people who are enjoying that, I say you're welcome.
Yes.
You know, for those of us who were in the trenches and took our lumps for being Star Trek fans who knew how to do the Vulcan hand sign, and that didn't impress anybody back in the day. So it's been lovely.
Ever in high school because I could do
no. But so it's been wonderful to see that evolution, and also a little bit annoying. It's like, not all of you are into this. Come on, you know. I enjoy being a nerd. I embrace it. I absolutely embrace it. You know, I've been to Dragon Con 5 times. That's the one place where, like you, I get to do the nerdy material. I get to do not just jokes about Star Trek, but Star Trek Next Generation, Star Trek Voyager, Star Trek Deep Space Nine. Like the audience, a regular audience would have lost you after the first one. Yep. You know, but when you can actually go deep into, you know, the Kelvin timeline and people are with you, and then you branch out to Star Wars, or you branch out to Marvel, or you branch out to DC, like it just is so much fun being with your people.
Yes.
So to speak. And I love the big tent nerdiness of it all, because being a nerd, it crosses cultures, colors, economics. You know, there's especially at Dragon Con, I can't speak for all cons, but there's this thing that just brings all these people together, whether you're anime or fantasy, that we all have this ability to just embrace, you know, this wonderful nerd culture. We're all there, you know, like it's kind of the blueprint I wish we had for the world.
Yeah, there's the very first time I ever did a show at a con, it was a local one in Ohio, and someone else had organized it, so I was doing a set on their show, and they knew I was nerdy and could do like 10 minutes on Star Wars or something, so they invited me. And then we had a little meeting, and the guy said, the one thing is, they said it's like a free speech zone. I don't care about what language you use, but there's one thing: you cannot make fun of anyone in the audience. And I was not going to do that anyway, but what he was referring to is that because of the way comedians play with audience members, you might see somebody in a cosplay or in a particular look to them, or an outrageous hat, and a normal comedian could not stop themselves from pointing that out.
No, well,
but in that is like the spirit. It's like, no, we're not here to point at each other. We're here to like hug each other.
To celebrate each other.
Yes.
Listen, one of my favorite jokes when I'm at the con is that the person who stands out is the person who's not cosplaying. Yeah. Like, what's wrong with you? What are you, a serial killer? Get a costume, you whack job. I remember showing up to my first con, and I thought I was a nerd. I really did. I had the audacity to think I was a nerd, and I'm standing there in Nerd Grand Central going, I had no idea. Yep.
Well, I thought I was an anime fan until I realized, because anime churns quickly. So the anime that you like, that's already passé 3 months later. So I was thinking, like, I love, and there's like a Death Note or whatever animes I love. I was like months behind the curve. Like everybody had already moved on. Again, I felt like, I thought I was an anime fan. I know nothing about anime.
Yeah, and I literally know nothing about anime. But what's wonderful is when you go to these cons, and if there's something you don't know about, and you say you don't know, there's 15 people deep at the bar willing to explain it to you.
I'll just leave it at watch Death Note, the anime series. That's what you should start with. I need to ask you this. You do list your favorite science fiction movie as Terminator 2.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. For
I mean,
sure.
great film, but I don't think it's a film that many people pick as their all-time favorite sci-fi film, do they? Lay it down.
I don't know what
got
other
you
people
there?
are
Why
picking.
is that your film?
T2 was so well done.
Mm-hmm.
It still stands up. Terminator, the original, does not stand up. It didn't age well, but Sarah Connor doing push-ups in the beginning of the film, she's just, so buff, and the storyline. And I know that, subsequent Terminators have tried to sort of, cash in or build on the franchise. Why wouldn't they? But, that was the introduction. That was the flow metal Terminator. There were so many introductions there that just really sort of broke the mold. Terminator, it's almost like I don't like to compare Terminator 1 with Terminator 2 because it's like comparing Star Trek original series with Next Generation. There's canon. And it's right there. They set up the universe. You just leave it and let it stand on its own, and then you judge everything else. And so, Terminator 2 does it for me. Like, again, it's like comedy for me. If I'm flipping channels and Terminator 2 is on, that's what we're doing today, everybody. That's how much I enjoy it. But I will throw in Serenity, because I came late to that franchise because I was Buffy the Vampire Slayer fan at the time. So I came late to the party, but it's one of my favorite sci-fi movies. There's a lot to choose from. There's a lot when it's well done. When sci-fi is well done, there's a lot to choose from. You got to pick something.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for sharing that, and as well as actually thanks for your thoughts on comedy and satire. I really appreciate you and your time.
I had no thoughts on satire, so I apologize.
As promised, I will edit it so we both sound like geniuses, so don't worry.
I appreciate that.
Keep up, doing everything you're doing. I enjoy your comedy, and hopefully I can see you like live on stage someday when this pandemic is over and we're traveling.
That would be awesome. I feel once I'm out of my house for good, I'll never come back here.
Or you may never leave your house again and only ever do virtual shows.
Oh, and by the way, Next Gen Warp Core.
Okay.
I know you can't use that for the podcast, but that's my background.
I was admiring that, but also because you're in front of it, I didn't have a clear look.
I realized that now.
I went out to LA in the early 90s, like 91 maybe. And I had a friend who worked at Paramount and got me a lot tour, but it was a normal lot tour, but he just I didn't have to pay. He snuck me in a side door and put me in a group and just said, hey, go on. And then the tour
That's a good friend.
The tour guide, who I didn't know, my friend of a friend, he said to our group, over here's where they do Deep Space Nine. And this is the sound studio for Next Generation. And he said, we're not allowed to take people onto sci-fi sound stages because I don't want things getting messed up because it could mess up shooting schedules and stuff. But he said that. And then he said, but you know what? This was right when Next Generation had shut down production. So he said, let's just sneak in and see what we can see. I don't know what we'll be allowed to do. And yes, I have walked on the bridge of the Enterprise and in engineering and in the one hallway. The one hallway that's all the hallways.
Oh my God.
This was also early 90s. So there was no cell phones. I didn't have a camera. I didn't even think that years later I'd be telling this story. At the time, it was just, this is kind of cool. Wow, look where I am.
That is so awesome.
A little cherished nerd memory of mine.
That's fabulous. That's fabulous. Are you watching any of the new stuff?
So I don't have whatever they're streaming, the CBS streaming.
CBS All Access,
just and borderline on how many streaming services do I need?
I had to make choices.
Yes, I cut a couple during the pandemic. I don't need this many.
Yeah, no, I didn't see the new Star Trek for the first year it was out. Because I'm not paying money. I'm not doing another service. But I got rid of some stuff. And, I did it strategically when I could binge. I would, pay for it and binge and then cancel.
Well, so I do a little a nerd podcast, but I haven't done any for a while. But a friend of mine is an author who has written unauthorized histories of Star Wars and Star Trek. And I've had him on my other podcast 2 different times, once to talk Star Wars stuff and once to talk Star Trek stuff. So he and I had a long conversation about the new stuff. Also, he said, just get the 7-day free trial and binge watch everything and then just cancel immediately. I don't have that kind of stamina. I'm too old to watch an entire series in 3 days. I gotta pace it out a little bit.
Yeah. It does take quite a bit of a commitment. I just did that with Lovecraft Country. Whew.
I just literally
it was tough.
In the month of February, I started Lovecraft Country, and I loved the first episode, and the second episode kind of turned me off, and I haven't gone back to it. You watched it all. Should I go back? Should I give it a chance?
I had a confused face for the first 3 episodes. It was like, I'm like, you know what? I'm here for the culture, so I'm gonna keep watching. Here's the problem: I'm not a Lovecraft fan.
Okay.
I was never an H.P. Lovecraft fan.
Medium.
So.
I've read some of his stories, but I'm not like hardcore.
Yeah, no, I was never. He was always weird to me. So, there's some of that I had to get past. Plus, there's a companion podcast to the series. And I'm like, why are you making people work so hard to understand your show? Yeah. I'm a little turned off by that, but I stuck with it. And it is beautiful acting, great writing, amazing storytelling, but it's a commitment.
Did you watch the Watchmen series on HBO?
Oh, yes, I did. And I binged it in a day because I'm screen actor. It was rough. Because I didn't want to watch it because I kept asking people, I said, do I need to read the comic book or the graphic novel to understand it? And everybody said no. They were wrong. So I came in without sort of that underlying foundation or background, and I watched it in a day because it was really difficult.
Okay.
But if I was going to cosplay, I would cosplay as her. That outfit was amazing. Have you seen it?
Oh, I've seen it.
Oh, okay.
The original graphic novel as well.
Oh, so you're in. The episode that made everything worth it for me was when it was a flashback, changed places with her father, grandfather. Yeah. I'm forgetting now.
She lived some of the memories of her grandfather because of some drugs.
Yes. Oh,
yes.
This is one of the best things I have ever seen.
Yeah, I agree.
So good.
I enjoyed that whole series, but that episode was like an accomplishment. It was like beyond good television.
It was one of those things where the aliens come, they're going to destroy our planet, and you go, wait, look at this. Look at this episode. Will this save us? It was so good.
I asked because, although it's not the same, they both are finding interesting ways to talk about race.
Yes.
And so I think that partially turned me off of Lovecraft because I thought Watchmen did that so well. And the first episode of Lovecraft was doing that. Like I was enjoying the story, but I appreciated the interweaving they were doing. I mean, the second episode seemed like clumsier.
My thought was, wow, how difficult were some of those roles to play for the white actors?
Sure.
Because you have to do that role convincingly, and they did, and it was like, wow, when they called cut, were they sitting in the trailer going, I cannot believe I said yes to this, right. Because that had to be hard on everybody, in today's context to do that, and I'm not usually a background story person, but I would have loved to have heard that, was that difficult for you?
Making of notes?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, I usually don't like making ofs. I just show me what you made. I don't need to know what went into it.
I've never watched a single post-episode Game of Thrones behind-the-scenes episode.
Me neither.
Don't care. Credits
don't
roll,
care.
Off.
Although I'm still very much scarred and angry from season 8. Sure. That was an abomination. Like, how dare you? How dare you?
Yeah. I mean, the last 2 seasons were a step down, and I think it's clear that they didn't have George R.R. Martin anymore. Like all the other seasons are based on what he provided them.
Mm-hmm.
But to get from like W to Z, he gave them a few notes, like this is what's supposed to happen in the story, but it was all the 2 showrunners. And I think they rushed through it. They didn't handle it well.
Yes.
They didn't convince anybody that these things should happen. I will say,
I'm sorry, no, go ahead.
I didn't hate it as much as some people did, but I was mediocre, like way from one of the greatest adventure TV shows of all time down to sort of like, I
was one of those people. I was distraught because I read the books.
Yep.
I read the books. I knew when they took a detour, but it still worked. And I felt like you were handed literature and you made it into Twitter. How dare you? How dare you do this with my love?
I will say too, because I've watched the last 2 seasons at least twice all the way through.
Mm-hmm.
On the second watching, I liked it even less. I think the first one, I was like almost more casual in my viewing. Like, this isn't as good as before, but they're trying to get to the end. I've developed a theory that in trilogies, not everybody agrees with this, the middle one, if not the best, has advantages. Because the first
Star Wars,
the first of the trilogy has to set things up, introduce characters, Lord of the Rings, get the journey starting. And in the end, they got to get to the ending, and it's not always easy to stick the landing. But in the middle, you can just have adventures.
Yeah, I can see that with the original 3 Star Wars. I don't even know how to categorize the other ones.
Yes, they're just other movies.
They're other movies. Other movies. I don't, although I will say Mandalorian was good. It's better than I expected. I'm really more Star Trek than Star Wars. Like I'm more conversant in my Klingon.
Excellent. Well, I want to come.
My dear, thank you so much for this.
Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Any chance to talk comedy and nerd out? Wow.
Absolutely. Well,
that's a Tuesday.
Look forward to seeing more of your comedy.
Oh, Jerry, thank you so much.
Hey, I'm just jumping back in here to wrap things up. I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you, Leighann, so much. Just to keep you abreast of what's going on with the podcast, this season 2 is going to be made up of 10 weekly episodes. Was episode 7, so I have 3 more episodes coming out. So every Sunday morning, check in for a new episode. Here are some of our upcoming episodes. Next week, Sunday, May 16th, will be my interview with John Poveromo. It'll include guest host Jesse Pimpinella. The following week, we are going to do our next live Q&A. The actual live stream will be on Saturday the 22nd at 3 p.m. It'll be on our YouTube channel, so the Comical Heathen YouTube channel. So please check in. My Action Comedy Nerd Show, Brother in Nerd Comedy, Dan Brown will be co-hosting that. What we really need for that episode to work is questions from you. So if you have any questions about comedy, about satire, about religion, about the book, about me, about life, the universe, or anything, feel free to email us at comicalheathen@gmail.com. I'll put that email in the description of this episode. You can also leave questions and comments on this episode or on any of our social media. I'm on Facebook and Twitter. Forward us some questions, comments, topics you'd like us to discuss, and we'll include that in the live stream. And then that will be edited and released by the 23rd. And then that will make May 30th the 10th episode of Season 2. And it's going to be a kind of mid-season finale. So we're going to do some special stuff on that episode. I'll leave that out as a teaser for right now, but that's the upcoming schedule. So make sure you check that out. This is also a independently produced ad-free podcast. So if you feel so inclined, we do have a button for donations. A link that leads you to that button is in the description of this podcast. And also, as with all podcasts and types of social media, please like, share, rate. If you tell 2 friends and they tell 2 friends, we could exponentially expand the fandom of this podcast. Anyway, let me just do a few more thank yous. Thank you, Leighann, for being my interview subject for the past 2 weeks. And thank you to my good friend Jeff Geddert. Jeff produced Season 2's theme music, which is actually based on Season 1's theme music, which is my friend Mark Bell playing Bach on the famous Skinner organ on the campus of Lake Erie College. And Mark said I could use his music for my theme music. And then for Season 2, Jeff took a sample of that and remixed it, and that's what we got now. Jeff also provides additional writing material and advice on this podcast, so thank you, Jeff, for all that you do. And then let me just thank you, the listener, especially if you got all the way to the end of this episode. I really appreciate you. Please, share your comments, suggestions, thoughts, etc., etc. And thanks for listening. And just as I sign off, let me just remind everyone, it might be your dogma, but it's my karma, and I'm all about spreading the love.